You're listening to the 49 Carats podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, March 11th. It is the first day of free agency. Well, the legal tampering period of free agency, which feels like the start of free agency already, just because there's a lot of news that breaks as soon as the clock strikes 1 p.m. Eastern. Glorious day. A very memorable day for all 49er fans, especially the ones who live on Twitter. I mean, that's pretty much what we did today, just refreshed and refreshed and refreshed. We had the notifications on for all the people. Some of us got fooled by fake accounts. I mean, we are all the way back, baby. And joining me to talk about it and some of the moves that the 49ers have made and maybe will look to make, in free agency is Weston P. Smith. Weston, how you doing today, man?
Steph, I'm fantastic. I'm as excited as everybody else is. It happens fast. It comes in a flurry, but glad to be back on Monday. Obviously, missing last Monday with you, so appreciate you bringing me back. I'm excited to talk about all things legal and illegal tampering period.
All right, let's get into it. The 49ers were kind of slow to make their first move. Compared to what fans wanted them to do or maybe expected them to do. We kept hearing about a big splash signing, right? Right out the gate, there's some big splash signings made, not by the 49ers. So we're like, what is going on? Come on, do something. And the 49ers go ahead and they signed an edge rusher, Leonard Floyd, formerly of the Bills, of the Rams, to a 2-year deal. It's a $20 million deal worth up to $24 million, and he'll get $12 million guaranteed in year one. I like this move, Weston, but I'll tell you what, it's not like the big move I was expecting. Oh. I like it because there's some value there. I think he's been very durable. He hasn't missed a game since 2017. And I think also he's been pretty consistent in his career. If you look at his sack numbers, if you look at the Brandon Staley connection, his best season came with the Rams. The one season that him and Brandon Staley were both there. So I don't know if Brandon Staley had a hand in Leonard Floyd, maybe, hyped them up a bit to John Lynch. Not sure, but I like it for it seeming like a fit. I'll tell you this. I don't think the 49ers are done yet, though, at the edge rusher position. I think this is just one of two moves. I think they'll make two moves, two like semi-big or big moves with the edge rushers. And, of course, they always bring in some randoms to then be their depth and their rotation signings. We expect that as well. But I don't think they're done. Weston, tell me what you think about this move.
They better not be done. I'll start with that. I'll say that I like it. I don't love it. Leonard Ford's a good football player. I've followed his career actually really closely because I was really high on him coming out of Georgia. And he went in the top 15, if I remember correctly. I mean, this is going back quite a few years. He's been in the league, I don't even know, 8-9 years at this point. But I do think it's good value knowing what edge rushers are getting in the league right now if you have a propensity to rush the quarterback. What I don't love about it is he's not a 3-down guy, right? And I think they need somebody like that, or they should be striving to get somebody like that to play opposite Nick Bosa for a vaunted what is usually a highly touted defensive line that doesn't feel as such. But it's hard to knock the player. Good football player. I mean, statistically speaking, really good and consistent production and availability over the last 3-4 seasons. It's just another piece, right? Like if fans are sitting here saying that's the move, no, this is Leonard Floyd is not the guy who takes you to it's a move. It's not
Yeah.
the move, right?
Yes. Yep.
And that's really hard to find in the NFL, right? Like, is the move that does it. It's always a culmination. But I'm for it, right? And, I mean, when you're sitting all day and you follow the national media like we all do, and all the big names saying, hey, the 49ers are going to make a splash, right? Like, they're all in on this. And you're sitting there and it's like, all right, 3 hours go by, 4 hours go by, 5 hours go by. I mean, you're just glad to see 49ers, right? Like, across your phone or with the alert. It's just not it's not the sexiest of plays for me, but very rarely does sexy win it, right? Very rarely is that the case. It's I like the value here. If I look at the contract to the production, I'm sure they can get cute with this on a 2-year deal. I'm sure they're hiding a lot of the money guaranteed up front, and in the form of a sign-on bonus or something like that. So it doesn't really. This is where I agree with you. I think they'll get cute enough with the numbers that, like, this is not going to immediately impact any big time player they're looking at. But I'll say this for the 49er fans that are disappointed that Brian Burns isn't here, right? Or whatever the splash player might be, let's not kid ourselves. They made the calls. They did the homework like any prudent team was. It just was a point that they couldn't match or weren't willing to. But I promise you, they made the calls on the players that we all wanted them to.
Yeah, and Brian Burns, who was franchise tagged by the Panthers, he got traded today and not too long ago before we went live here to the New York Giants, another bad team. So it sucks for Brian Burns, unless you're a fan of money, in which case I am sure Brian Burns is. So it was a massive deal for Burns, who is just 25 years old. So definitely a player for them to be able to build around. The Panthers, got pick 39 and a 2025 fifth rounder in exchange for it in a fifth round pick swap. And he got a massive, massive deal. I'm trying to find it. I'm like, trying to scroll
It's
through my
5 years. I
there you go.
want to say it was like almost 80 million, if not more, in guaranteed money. But as you're looking for, Steph, like, this is the other thing that free agency is littered with cautionary tales, right? The 49ers have not been able to avoid this as well. So for those who want to be the first team tied to the first player from the first big time player, this kind of like jogged my memory of some of these cautionary tales when you had mentioned, like, hey, I'm sure he's a fan of money. Like, they all are. And as am I, as are you, right? We know what makes the world go round, and their earning, opportunity is certainly, or window is small. But I think, like, just because you pay that person, just because they're the big time name, it doesn't always equate when they transfer to teams, right? Like, I would say the league is actually littered with more cautionary tales than success stories from a free agency period. Remember, in the NFL, you're rewarded for what you have done, not necessarily what you're going to do. And this happens with your own team. Like, look at the 49ers. Like, pay Debo, what do you get in return? Wasn't all that great. Paid Nick Bosa, what'd you get in return? Still wasn't all that great in the statistical columns, right? Like, it's still a great season. You take that all day. Pay Javon Hargrave. Fans would sit here and would argue that production didn't match compensation, even though he still had, a halfway, if not, but we didn't pay for halfway decent, right? This is like what the league is filled with. So, I always say, like, be careful what you wish for and be optimistic about the teams who are a little bit more. I'm not even saying this is the 49ers. I'm not even lumping Brian Burns into this because I think he's a better player than what I'm describing right here. I think he will ascend no matter where he is. Mm-hmm. But, like, the teams that are prudent, the teams that find the ones that match scheme, match locker room, match all of that, and have some decent production, those are the ones that tend to excel when they find their new environment.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a cautionary tale when you see some of these big signings. You mentioned Javon Hargrave. He was, according to Sports Illustrated, the worst free agent signing of 2023. So the 49ers definitely not trying to repeat that. And anytime, because you're going to see it every offseason, there's winners and losers of free agency. And it means nothing. It's just one person's opinion of the perception of that said player, what that player has done, and the expectation, right? But the expectation doesn't always get lived up to, as we have seen. So,
You
you
play
know,
fantasy football, right, Steph?
yes, I sure do.
The winners and losers, and listen, I talk about these because we all talk about them, but the winners and losers is the equivalent of like having a fantasy draft on Yahoo. If you get
Oh yeah,
if you get an A plus rating for your report card in Yahoo, you're going to finish dead last in your league, right? If you are C minus or
tale as old as
below,
time.
yeah, you're a playoff spot, guaranteed, like guaranteed. You know what I
So
mean?
true.
And like you said, it's a single opinion that brings us those stories and those tales.
Classic, so classic. So yeah, I mean the 49ers I would expect are going to make a lot of moves. Most of them, won't excite us too much, but they are important. They're all important. And I would say one that is pretty important is the 49ers extended a tender offer to Juwan Jennings, who was a restricted free agent. He got the second round tender, which is what me and many other people kind of expected him to be at. That would get him about 4 point something million for this season, 2024. And so basically what this tender means, I chose this exact tweet from Nick Wagner to display here because he explained the tender process really well. So any team wanting to sign Juwan Jennings would need to create an offer that the 49ers refuse to match and be willing to give up a second round pick to land Juwan Jennings. So I think it's good value for the 49ers. And I think it ensures that he will most likely stay with the 49ers and play with the 49ers for this season, the 2024 season, because I think that second round tender probably a little too rich for a team who hasn't had Juwan Jennings before. You know what I mean?
Totally. I love the positioning of what they're doing with Juwan Jennings, right? It's a win-win no matter what. You know the player, you know what he brings to your team, you know he does everything that you ask your wide receivers to do, and he still has a little bit of that like clutch gene in him. Hence, third and Juwan, right? As he's been come to be known in SF. But the truth is like you'd be equally as thrilled if the money came up, you didn't have to pay him, and you got a second round pick for somebody that, keep me honest, I think it was you spent a 7th round pick on 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. Like that is playing chess versus checkers, right? And the truth is, like you said, this all but guarantees that Juwan Jennings is a San Francisco 49er next year. He's going to get paid more than the market would probably dictate for him. And he doesn't carry second round value for other teams because other teams don't do what the 49ers do offensively and how he fits. But like the 49ers like almost daring the NFL, like, yeah, go ahead. Like somebody please make this offer. Like you just have to make it equivalent. And we'll say, no, we're not a dollar over. And we'll say we're not matching to take that second round pick and get younger. But who doesn't, like we all stand Juwan Jennings. Like who doesn't want him here?
And Kendrick Bourne, who Juwan Jennings, often does get compared to, and still to this day has gotten linked back to the 49ers because he was set to be a free agent. He re-signed with the Patriots. And again, he's coming off an ACL. He got a deal, a 3-year deal worth up to $33 million. So comparable players. And again, Bourne coming off an ACL tear and rehabbing that. So I think, again, this is good value for Juwan Jennings and what you're going to get with Juwan Jennings, which is reliability and really good blocking. Some pancakes are going to be in there. You're paying for some pancakes. These are the expensive kind, but it's all good. So I'm definitely happy to have Juwan Jennings back for at least another year. And who's to say that the 49ers can't negotiate an extension if they want, potentially, with Jennings during the season. I mean, I think that's on the table as well.
Absolutely. It's all on the table. Like he's past his rookie contract, right? And what the collective bargaining agreement dictates. We're seeing this with Brock Purdy, right? Like they literally can't extend him legally, according to the collective bargaining agreement as at this moment in time. So like it's all on the table now for Juwan. It's a totally different ball game. We'll do mathematic gymnastics like throughout and what makes sense and what makes the most sense. But I think if you, like you said, look at the receiver market, if this guy's coming back for, what'd you say, 4 million a year, essentially 4 to 5 million a year.
Yeah.
I think you're comfortable with that. I think you're comfortable.
I definitely am. Let's talk about some other moves that we've heard the 49ers make. Now, I will preface this by saying I don't think it's official yet. And what I mean by that is there hasn't been like an official transaction made to reflect this. But the reports are that the 49ers approached Eric Armstead to take a significant pay cut. And so another restructure. He was due to get 17.41 million this season. The past 2 seasons, Eric Armstead has dealt with some, injuries. He hasn't always been healthy these past 2 years. The plantar fasciitis seems to be something that's not going to go away. All right. And then he played with the MCL injury in the Super Bowl. And when he came back from that late in the season in the playoff run. So injuries seem to be a thing. He's up there in age now as well. What is he, like 30, 31 or something? So he's up there, and I think it's fair for the 49ers to ask him to take a pay cut from that 17.41 million. I also think it's fair for Eric Armstead to say no, which he did. So that's why the 49ers, or we're seeing the reports of 49ers are going to release Eric Armstead, and he will become a free agent. This is big. I think not that it's surprising, again, because of the money factor of it all, but it's big. I mean, Eric Armstead has been quite the mainstay of this team. He is nearing 10 years with the team, and just like, Jimmy Ward, it looks like he's not going to reach that 10 years with the team, and both sides are going to be moving on from each other. And so, man, this is again, I think we knew that difficult decisions were being thought of by the 49ers and, being discussed. And this is just one of the ones that we kind of could see the writing on the wall for Eric Armstead. What do you think about this one, Weston?
The fan in me, it's sad, right? Like you hate that in a league that you see zero loyalty and tenure anymore, right? Like he's played for the San Francisco 49ers his entire professional career to this point. Survivor of the whole DeForest Buckner scenario and got that big contract, and everybody would rather have Armstead been gone than DeForest Buckner. And he's played at high levels. Yes, he's on the wrong side of 30 for the NFL, which is sad to say because I'm way on the wrong side of 30 for anything. But production has shrunk. You mentioned the plantar fasciitis, like feet issues for very big men like Eric Armstead, right? I mean, 6'7", damn near 300 pounds. Like they just don't go away, right? Like once the body starts breaking a little bit on you, like the only way it recovers is like you stop. And he's clearly not stopping. For me, this is just like, I have a couple things about it, real quick. I'm sad. I totally understand this, right? This is the approach conversation to Eric Armstead about like, we need you to take a pay cut. I am 100% doing if I am the San Francisco 49ers. And if I am Armstead, I'm doing exactly what he did. No, right? Like I'm still under contract. But the thing to consider here is, Mayoko here, he also tweeted like the 49ers have turned in zero paperwork for today, right? Like towards the league to be processed. That also means players that you plan on cutting and doing those things. So it definitively doesn't even become official until Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, Eric's got agents. I'm sure they're making calls right now, seeing what it would be. Like, do I think he's gone? Exactly. Yes. There is possibility that they can essentially re-sign him or he wants to come back to the table and renegotiate. That is still there, so don't dismiss that fact. Of course, the only way the 49ers entertain it for short money. But it's just sad because he's a mainstay. obviously a fantastic human being, right? Like your team's Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for how many consecutive years and how many years since he's been in the league. Like that speaks volume of his character. But what I'm having an actual difficult time understanding is I know depending, no matter how you slice this, like you're going to feel the impact of this move this year and next year. It's just a matter of how much are you going to feel it this year and how little will you feel it next year. But if it, mathematically speaking, if we're talking about 2.5 million savings, 3 million savings like this year, why? He's a free agent next year, right? And like, I want him part of my 51. I feel better about my team, even if it doesn't take a pay cut. You're paying him the damn money anyway. Like, you might as well be wearing your helmet, which I'm sure he would have been fine with. And then let's talk about compensation for him leaving in free agency and compensatory picks and yada, 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 yada. Logically speaking, the end result here doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But like how we got to this point, I completely understand it. If that makes sense to you, Steph, on what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers restructured his contract a couple times. And so that's part of the reason why, his cap hit became so high for this season. They kicked the can down the road and now they're trying to squash that can, even though it was kind of their own doing, right? So yeah, in that sense, it makes little sense, and it's just, we talk about cautionary tales. That's one cautionary tale of restructuring and over restructuring a contract, especially for a player who is only getting older. I mean, when he first got this extension, he was in 2020, he was 27, so now 31. And yeah, have to make some tough decisions. But I guess that's the one detail that's missing in all of this because it hasn't officially been set in as a official transaction. We don't know if this is going to be a pre-June 1st release or a post-June 1st release, and that has implications as well because if it's a pre-June 1st release, the 49ers only get cap savings of $2.5 million. That does not make it worth it at all. It would almost be silly as part of like what you were saying, Weston, for a post June 1st release, you have 17.8 million of cap savings and, at that point, 15.5 dead cap. But that's still way less than, the dead cap gets split out into 2 years if it's a post June 1st release. So that softens the blow a little bit. You still have the dead cap. It's just not in one large lump sum of dead cap, right? That goes into 2024, split into 2 years. So for the 49ers financially, that absolutely would make most sense if the 49ers designated that way. They wouldn't get that money until June 1st, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
If they do designate it as such. So yeah, we'll just see what the 49ers do in that regard. And like you said, Weston, it's still very much in play that the two sides could reach some type of agreement before anything becomes official. So that is also on the table. But let's talk about this that just came through here. Diana Rossini reported that Azeez Al-Shaair, former 49ers linebacker, former Titans linebacker, who is a free agent, he's expected to sign with the Texans. Who could have seen this coming? I mean, yeah, reunion with D'Amico Ryans. This is, man, I know a lot of people wanted him to potentially return to the 49ers, but I didn't see it happening just because, for one, I think Azeez is an ascending player. I think he deserves to be the Mike, somewhere, the LB1 somewhere, just like he was with the Titans this past season. And I think the Texans give him an opportunity to do that. The 49ers he'd be taking a demotion, basically. And not just that, I mean, Dre Greenlaw isn't dead. I mean, he would come back at some point in the season. So what would happen to Azeez then? So it never made sense to me for 49er fans to think that Azeez was an option. But, that being said, I this is still crushing, because I think there was still just some small speck of the fan in me, irrational fan in me, who just wanted to see it happen, just because this team, this fan base loves Aziz. But I'm happy for him.
Yeah, listen, could he go to a better spot for himself than under his former defensive coordinator? It was never going to happen. He was way out of what they were probably willing to spend versus what they already have tied up in their linebacking core, with or without the injury to Dre Greenlaw. It was really nice to dream about it when your head hit the pillow, because we all loved him. None of us wanted him to go. You wanted to find room on the roster to keep him, Dre, and all pro Fred, but it was never going to happen. But this is the best thing for him, the best spot. He'll get his bag, and he's going to get his coach as well. So good for Aziz. I'm happy for him. But I was never under the disillusion that he was going to return to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what the 49ers do at linebacker, right? Because they do still have to address it. And that's what makes it tricky, because Dre Greenlaw is going to come back at some point in the season. That can change how a free agent linebacker looks at the 49ers being an enticing place to be, because what happens to me after Greenlaw comes back? And am I going to be the third guy that comes in on certain packages? Like, no, so it's going to be interesting what the 49ers do there. Maybe, again, they feel good with the Winters, Jalen Graham taking a second-year leap. Maybe they address it in the draft once again. Keep an eye on this one, what the 49ers do at the linebacker spot. But
I think it's all draft and last year's guys, D Winters, Jalen Graham. Like, one of them has got to seize the opportunity. And I think that's what the 49ers are really hoping for, hence why they drafted them in the first place,
Although, I feel like the 49ers have attempted this before. One example, Drake Jackson, and it hasn't worked out for them. And because it didn't work out for them, putting all their eggs in the basket of a player that they drafted and hoped would take that second-year leap, they were retroactively trying to fix the position in season.
Yeah.
And even that, you can argue didn't really work out for them, right? So I'm a little... I wonder if they maybe learned from that and maybe wouldn't want to put all of their eggs in the young players' baskets.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, there are plenty of vets that are mid-30s floating around the league right now that were once upon a time superstars that may take a deal on the cheap to go play for a contender. That's certainly a possibility.
Before we talk about this next topic here, wanted to mention Charlie Warner, 49ers tight end for the past few seasons. He has left in free agency. He's going to be an Atlanta Falcon. That's where he played college, so a familiar place for him. 4 years, $12 million. Quite the payday for a player who is basically a blocking specialist. Like that is pretty much all he is. All he has been with San Francisco is part of the reason why, I think he lasted so long with the 49ers. They valued that blocking, but definitely not enough to keep him. Also, let me just put this one out there. The Patriots are re-signing Michael Onwenu, offensive lineman. He's a guard and tackle, one of the most coveted offensive linemen who is going to be available. So the Patriots get him back. That's no longer an option for the 49ers. If they were even looking at him as an option, I don't know why they wouldn't. But Onwenu off the books for free agency. But Charlie Warner, back to Warner. Who doesn't want to talk about him, right? I mean, just that's another position that not a lot of people are really talking about, the tight end spot. I mean, the 49ers covet their blockers. We don't want to see George Kittle, as good as he is at blocking, relegated to being the blocking guy because he's so good as a receiver. And you're honestly like doing yourself and him a disservice by, just using him as a blocker. So you lose one of your key blockers in Charlie Warner, your other blocking tight end, Ross Dwelly. Although Dwelly, maybe catches a little bit more than Warner. He's also leaving in free agency. Or, sorry, he's a free agent. I don't know if he's leaving. He could potentially still re-sign with the 49ers, but 49ers drafted Cam Latu and Braden Willis last season. And I don't know if we've seen enough to, again, assume that the 49ers are going to feel comfortable putting their eggs in those baskets at the tight end position. So that's another position for me to watch.
Yeah, I think I don't think they addressed it in free agency. You invested a third in Latu. You saw something, right? Like whatever that is, you saw. I mean, we saw Braden Willis dressed in the Super Bowl, right, on the biggest of stages. So,
Yeah.
I think
He committed penalty.
It's all right, but you saw him in his rookie season in meaningful time, right? Like that means there's some sense of belief in what he's doing, whether it's special teams or whether it's being on the off, whatever it might be. I think the only way they address it in the draft is if the board just falls that way, right? Like if they're at the part of the draft where it's BPA, right, best player available, and it's between 1, 2, or 3 players, and one of them is a tight end, I wouldn't be surprised at that moment in time. I better not see third round investment plus into this position right now, but maybe again with all of these things for every single team, like never sleep on just a league vet who's just a savvy locker room type kind of guy that's always going to, make the culture better and stronger. Like they'll kick the tires on someone like that too.
If they look at some of the free agent tight ends, Noah Fant, good as he'd be solid as a receiving tight end. And Austin Hooper, who they've shown interest in the past as well, could, he's a free agent. So a couple names that I think are out there if the 49ers want to bring some more experience, because I'm fine with Latu and Braden Willis, but I think they need one other, besides Kittle, another veteran in that room. So we'll see what they do at that position. Speaking of offensive linemen, because we were just talking about Onwenu re-signing with the Patriots, the 49ers bring back one of their own earlier today as well. It wasn't the splash signing we were all expecting, but they brought back right guard, or I don't know if he's specifically right guard, but guard Ben Barch. He was with the team last season, but they like him, it seems like, and so he's going to be back on the cheap. So it's a nice depth signing for them. Maybe someone they bring in to camp. He also has positional versatility. He could play guard and center, and he's only back for a 1-year deal. So, I mean, hey, why not, right?
Yep. Why not? Why not's right? I mean, like, look at what are you seeing what the guards are getting right now in the league, and this kid's 25 years old, hasn't played a ton of football, right? Injuries have been a concern while at Jacksonville and coming here. He's drafted during the COVID year, which was like really just bizarre for everybody. This is a low risk, potentially high reward. You get him a little bit more extended time. And for Kyle's offense, it's like, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be accountable and in the right place at the right time and get a body in front of somebody. It doesn't have to be a pancake block every single time, right? Just like get a body in front. I don't know enough about Ben Barch. Do you, to say that he's not capable of doing that any better or any worse than the guys who are in front of him? Like, I just feel like, okay, again, not a splash move, not a sexy move, but it just feels like the move like that a lot of teams would make. Like, hey, maybe this guy just showed up to every meeting and was great, and like, hey, we want to bring him back because we think he, with more time and a full camp with us, like he could surprise somebody. And you're not paying a whole lot of money to see if he's surprised. You're certainly not paying 4 years, $50 million for some of these interior offensive linemen.
Yeah, and speaking of the 49ers making some moves, and speaking of some of the restructures, right? The 49ers did restructure Fred Warner's contract as well. last week. He had no problem, agreeing to that. But I have to assume it wasn't a significant pay cut for him. Probably just spreading that money differently in a different direction, different year, something like that. So we don't really have the details of it quite yet, but we do know that there was some restructure. And I think that alone should help the 49ers, again, give them more room for moves in free agency. So, and congrats to Fred Warner because him and his wife, Sydney, had their first child, a couple days ago. So I believe his name is Bo Warner.
Bo Warner.
That just sounds like a dog, man.
Yeah,
Like that dude's gonna grow up and be a dog in the NFL, probably a linebacker, just like his daddy.
No, I'm gonna put money on an edge rusher, and by the time he gets to the league, edge rushers will be making about like 82 million a year, right? Like that's a cool 82 mil, no big deal. Although Bo feels like a quarterback name, if I'm being realistic. But
Bo, yeah.
In any case, congratulations to the Warners. We all knew this was coming, right? And I mean, you mentioned this with Armstead before, like. You eventually have to pay the piper when you restructure these, but players love it. Come to me and ask me every year to restructure because what do we know about the NFL contract? Not guaranteed, right? Like the rest of professional sport. Yeah. So you can say, oh, you want to pull 10 million off the books and you're just going to give me 10 million or 12 million, 15 million, whatever it is, guaranteed as a bonus this year? Yes, please.
Yeah. Like
I don't even have to take a snap. And you're giving me that money no matter what happens, right? Like, talk about manipulation of the collective bargaining agreement and contracts. Players love it. Teams love it in the moment of a pinch. But I promise you, your CFO and your contract guys hate it 2-3 years down the line. When I said you will always pay the piper. It will always flush out one way or another. Bow, wow, I love it. But this just made sense, and I expect more of that. You mentioned the post June for Armstead. That's what I think this will probably get labeled. And when that does, the money comes available, then you roll that into next year, or you're using that to what do the 49ers famously do during the summer? They extend their players. I hope they don't wait that long for Ayuk and we figure it out. But that feels like Talanoa Hufanga money. That feels like Diamador Lenore money that's going to go to them and then lighten the books and then take that cap and carry it over next. It's just math gymnastics year after year after year.
Talking math over here. Look at us.
Geniuses. We should run teams, Steph. We should run teams.
Geniuses. Yeah. Look, on the topic of restructures, Kyle Juszczyk was also approached about taking a salary reduction, all right? And we still don't know if he's agreed or if he hasn't. It seems like they're trying to work it out, trying to work out the numbers. But, I mean, the possibility that I see is that he can potentially have the same fate as Eric Armstead, where if he refuses, the 49ers may just say no, and so, yeah, this is one to monitor. I think we'll keep an eye on it. But Kyle Juszczyk, who has been a bit of a staple for the Kyle Shanahan offense in San Francisco, they signed him to a big money contract in 2017. He's been a I don't want to say focal point of the offense. You barely notice him as far as, pass catching goes, but more so for blocking and other aspects of their game and what the 49ers like to do, what Kyle Shanahan likes to do on offense. Kyle Juszczyk, I think, plays a big role in that. It would be interesting if he were to be released, what that might mean for this offense going forward and adjustments that would come with that. So definitely want to keep an eye on.
He's in a little bit of a different state than Armstead. I think Armstead I don't want to call it a premium position, but obviously a valued position. The fullback is like a lost art in the NFL. There are very few teams that deploy it when it comes to it. I think if I'm his agent, I'm saying, Kyle, like, we're going to say no, but let's like listen to what they have to say about it, because I don't know if there's another team out there right now that's going to pay you $5.5 million, or almost $6 million, because nobody else really values the position as much. And if they are that and they have that cap room, they're hopefully ascending teams that are really young that might not invest in this vet. I just feel like the 49ers are more comfortable paying him this money than they are paying Armstead money at the end of the season, because like you said, I mean, he only plays like less than 40% of the offensive snaps, right? Like, he's not out there every single down, but his contribution and his impact does matter. So I feel like the 49ers are in a little bit of flux here, because you're not replacing Kyle Juszczyk, right? Like, he's very rare at what he does, and the fullback position matters to you, but you also don't want to be have the most expensive fullback in the league on your roster. So like I said, if I'm Juszczyk's agent, being like, listen, your wife's launching this business. We need this dough stacks to get behind her, because it's going to take off, right? And then you can retire. But in the short term, like, I don't know if anybody else is going to pay you what this team is willing to pay you. So there should be a common ground that we can find. And again, it'll probably look like, here's $3.5 million in bonus, and we're going to pay you league minimum, for the year, something along those lines.
Yeah, as we know, the 49ers could get very creative when it comes to this. So we'll see what it looks like, for Kyle Juszczyk, and we'll see if there's any updates for this. Really quickly, just to end this show, because I always got to give some updates on the draft sheet. We do have a couple of top 30 visits to talk about, and not to talk about for a whole lot, but just to mention them here. Let me zoom in, because so small. All right, so we have Sione Vaki, safety and running back out of Utah, but he's made it clear he wants to be a safety at the next level. But interesting player, because he did play quite a bit of running back for Utah as well. He is 49ers requested a top 30 visit with him. They also met with him at the combine, so that tells you there's some interest there. And then edge rusher Marshawn Nealon out of Western Michigan is slated to have a top 30 visit with the 49ers as well. So those are the two top 30 visits that we know of so far, but keep an eye on it, because within the next month or so, that the top 30 visit reports are going to explode. We have pro day attendance that also is getting tracked in here, if you care about that. So I gotta see where the 49ers were today, because there were a couple of pro days today, so I gotta go look at that. But yeah, that's the update from me. Make sure that you guys keep checking the draft sheet, because I update it as often as we get the news. So make sure to do that. And Weston, there's going to be a lot more to talk about these coming days. Like, I know that 49er fans may be expecting a bigger splash on day one, but hey, it's not over. It's not about who has the fastest deals. Although there were some impressive deals today. Josh Jacobs to the Packers. You had Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles. We just saw Austin Eckler go into the Commanders. Adam Peters, man, he's making some moves over there. So
sure is.
Good for him. And running backs seem to be a premium position for free agency this year. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? So look, yeah, I expect the 49ers to have some moves of their own, not for a running back, but maybe for other positions that they need. Damn it, Noah Fant, he just re-signed with the Seahawks. So there goes my Noah Fant to 49ers prediction, but there'll be more, guys. There'll be more to come for the 49ers. So sit tight. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, because I will be going live as soon as, well, I can't say as soon as news breaks because I do have a life outside of this, but I almost as soon as I am available to go live. So if there's something big that happens tomorrow, Tuesday, I'll do it, and then back live for sure with Desi on Wednesday. So keep it locked, 49 Carats, and make sure you give Weston a sub as well on his channel. We're talking football. Weston, any parting words?
Go sign Kenny Moore. That's my parting. That's my parting wisdom for the day. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Steph. Like, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Be patient and just remember that, like, your team just played in the Super Bowl. It's hard to. It's all like the players that this league covet. Some of them are actually already on your roster, right? So let's not overreact to say we need to go get more. I get it. We all want new shiny toys, right? But this is about replenishment in certain areas, and go get it while you got that rookie quarterback contract.
I know I missed it. Brandon Allen re-signed with the 49ers as well.
That's the contract I was talking about for the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? That was a big signing, right? Third string quarterback last season for the 49ers, but prior to that was backup quarterback for Joe Burrow with the Bengals. So he has experience. I like it. It's cool with me. And it seems like Darnold is going to be departing in free agency. I'm also 100% okay with that. And it looks like Weston is as well. So, yeah, we'll have plenty more to talk about in the coming days. But for now, have a good rest of your Monday, folks. Peace.